My depression made me realize just how strong I really am. Although it's not always talked about so openly, mental illness is quite common. In fact, according to a survey done by Women's Health and the National Alliance of Mental Illness, 78% of women suspect they have one, and 65% have been diagnosed with one. Still, a huge stigma persists. To break that down, we spoke to 12 women dealing with conditions like depression, PTSD, and more. All this month, we're sharing their stories. Name: Alexandra Stone. Age: 26. Occupation: photographer. Diagnosis: anxiety and depression. My family moved to the United States from Yugoslavia when I was 10. Like the children of many migrants, I had such a responsibility because I was learning English at a far more rapid pace than my parents were. I began experiencing a great deal of anxiety that first year, and then the following year I started having panic attacks. It took going to the hospital to figure out what was going on. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, but I didn't get a formal depression diagnosis until I was in college, although I feel that I've been battling it since I was 10 or 11. I had asked my doctor how often it was normal to feel sad. I knew that question encompassed a lot more thought and emotion than just sadness, but at the same time, it was the only way I knew how to verbalize my concern. When I got the depression diagnosis, I didn't really address it. I had suspected this for a long time, so it wasn't a huge surprise. I was keenly aware that even though I had just been diagnosed, I had to keep going. Unfortunately, over the years, there have been moments where I didn't think I could pull through. But the older I get, the more sure I am of my own personal strength. At the time, the only person I told about my diagnosis was my boyfriend, who's now my husband. I didn't want to be judged, I wanted to feel like I just blended in. And for so many years, my family had been living below the poverty line and there were more pressing issues in my life at home. I wanted to be normal for just a single moment, and I didn't feel that it was necessary for me to share my diagnosis with anyone. I became more open in 2012. I began pursuing my artistic career as a self-portrait artist, and it was the first time I really shared it with anyone. I began blogging about it and about mental illness in general. The general response to my candidness was positive and encouraging. I have noticed a reprieve from the most severe symptoms, but there have been a handful of times when I've felt ill at ease. Depression really keeps you away from people. You can be surrounded by a room full of others and still feel completely isolated. So I do try to push myself to engage with others, and I feel like that is easing some of my symptoms. The hardest part is stepping out of your own head.